Picture this. You've got one of the absolute highest paying, most secure jobs on Wall Street. You've made it, right? But then you just quit. You pack up your entire life and you drive across America with literally nothing but a business plan sitting on your laptop. You start an online bookstore out of a rented garage. And then, fast forward 30 years, you look back at what has become one of the single most valuable companies in human history. We're talking about a titan that delivers millions of packages every single day, streams blockbuster movies, runs the cloud computing infrastructure for massive global businesses, and, oh yeah, even launches rockets into space? Well, that is exactly what Jeff Bezos did.
So, how did one guy pull this off? I mean, to really understand this incredible trajectory, we have to rewind the clock a bit, because absolutely none of that massive modern empire we just talked about existed back in 1994. The world was completely fundamentally different. So how do you build a global juggernaut from absolutely nothing? Okay, let's dive into this explainer and find out.
Part 1. The Garage Startup.
So, set the scene. It's 1994. The internet was tiny. We're talking maybe 16 million people online, globally. For most folks back then, the phrase World Wide Web meant absolutely nothing. It sounded like sci-fi. But while researching tech trends at a New York hedge fund, Jeff Bezos stumbled onto a statistic that completely blew his mind. Internet usage was growing by 2,300% per year, literally exploding. And when you see growth like that, you realize pretty quickly that opportunities of that magnitude almost never happen.
Faced with that kind of astronomical growth, Bezos came up with what he called his regret minimization framework. It sounds super technical, but the idea is actually incredibly simple. He basically projected himself into the future, imagined himself as an 80-year-old man looking back on his life, and asked one simple question: would I regret not trying? And the answer? A resounding yes. So despite plenty of people, telling him it was a huge mistake, he quit that secure, lucrative job. He was absolutely ready to take the leap.
So, what's the next move? Jeff and his wife Mackenzie literally hit the road, driving from New York all the way to Seattle. Now, why Seattle? Well, it wasn't just random, it was incredibly strategic. Seattle had this deep pool of talented software engineers, it was sitting right near a major book distributor, and, crucially, Washington State had fewer sales tax obligations for out-of-state customers back then. During that very drive, Bezos was literally in the passenger seat typing up the first version of the business plan on his laptop. And by July of 1995, they officially launched out of a rented house's garage in Bellevue, Washington.
Okay, here's a pretty wild piece of trivia for you. The company we all know today wasn't originally going to be called Amazon. Bezos initially wanted to name it Cadabra, as in abracadabra. But they ran into a funny problem. Whenever he said it over the phone, lawyers kept mishearing it as cadaver. Yeah. Not exactly the vibe you want for a retail business, right? So Bezos pivoted. He ultimately chose Amazon, naming it after the world's largest river, because his vision, right from day one, was to build the absolute biggest store in the world.
Now, you might be wondering, why books? Why not just start selling everything right away? Well, it turns out books were the absolute perfect first product. There are already millions of existing titles out there. Think about a regular physical bookstore for a second. No matter how massive it is, it has literal physical shelf limitations. It just physically cannot stock millions of books. But an online catalog, it doesn't have that problem at all. Bezos realized an online store could let customers search a massive, comprehensive catalog and order almost anything, solving a very real, tangible problem for readers everywhere.
But let me tell you, the reality of those early days was incredibly scrappy. To save cash, employees literally built their own desks out of cheap wooden doors. Seriously? And it's a symbol of frugality that they still celebrate at Amazon today. The early team packed every single book by hand, just kneeling on the hard garage floor to box orders until someone finally had the bright idea that, hey, maybe packing tables would save our knees and make us way faster. When they officially launched, their very first known sale was this academic book called Fluid Concepts and Creative Analogies by Douglas Hofstadter. Oh, and get this, in the beginning, they had this bell in the warehouse that would ring every time a customer placed an order. Everyone would rush over to see if they knew the person. But soon enough, orders were flooding in so fast from complete strangers that they had to just turn the bell off permanently.
Part 2. Surviving the dot-com crash.
So as the internet exploded into the mainstream in the late 90s, investors were getting eager. They demanded quick profits. But Bezos completely flipped the script on them and often angered a lot of Wall Street analysts by intentionally losing money.
Yeah, you heard that right. Instead of maximizing short-term profits to keep investors happy, he aggressively reinvested practically every single dollar right back into the business. He poured money into better technology, massive new warehouses, a faster shipping infrastructure, hiring top-tier engineers, and stellar customer service. People thought he was crazy, but he firmly believed that long-term growth was literally the only metric that truly mattered.
And let me tell you, that strategy was put to the absolute ultimate test around the year 2000. That's when the dot-com bubble spectacularly burst. Thousands of overly hyped internet companies completely collapsed overnight and just vanished. Amazon's own stock price plummeted, and a ton of financial analysts were publicly predicting that the company would soon declare bankruptcy. But instead of panicking, Bezos tightened his belt. He cut costs, he drastically improved operational efficiency, and most importantly, he stubbornly kept his focus exactly where it had always been, entirely on the customer. While all those competitors vanished, Amazon survived.
Part 3. Obsessing over the customer.
The core philosophy that ensured they survived and ultimately fueled their massive growth was actually incredibly simple. Start with the customer and work backward. I want you to try to imagine online shopping today without these features. Seriously, think about it. Customer reviews, one-click ordering, personalized recommendations based on what you actually buy, super fast shipping, and hassle-free returns. Amazon didn't just use these things, they practically invented or popularized them. They innovated these concepts so deeply that they forced the rest of the entire internet to adopt them as standard practice just to keep up.
Then fast forward to 2005, and they drop a real game changer, something that completely altered consumer psychology forever. They launched Amazon Prime. The pitch was simple, right? Pay a flat yearly subscription fee and get fast, free shipping. Now, at first, industry observers thought this was financial suicide. They thought it was incredibly risky for a company that was already operating on razor-thin margins. But the psychology worked flawlessly. Once people paid that upfront fee, they actively changed their behavior. They started shopping at Amazon way more frequently just to make sure they were getting their money's worth out of the membership. It created this unmatched level of customer loyalty that became one of Amazon's biggest competitive advantages.
Part 4. Building the empire.
With that fiercely loyal customer base locked in, Amazon rapidly expanded exactly where you'd expect a retail giant to go. They moved into electronics, clothing, groceries, entertainment, smart devices, and eventually even healthcare. But here comes the big plot twist, and it hit in 2006. They launched Amazon Web Services, or AWS for short. Essentially, they started renting out their massive underlying computing power over the internet. Today, AWS isn't just some little side project. It literally powers countless websites, apps, and corporate infrastructures all over the globe. It has served as a massive, continuous cash cow for the company. So incredibly, one of their biggest successes wasn't even in retail.
Now, to manage an empire this diverse, you can't just wing it. Amazon built a very specific, intense culture rooted in some pretty rigid leadership principles. We've already talked a lot about customer obsession, but they also demand ownership. They push the drive to invent and simplify, they have a mandate to learn and be curious, the courage to think big, and ultimately, the very strict expectation to deliver results. Employees are pushed to experiment constantly, but, and this is key, they're also expected to back up all those wild ideas with hard, undeniable data.
But hey, here's the catch. When your culture demands constant invention, you have to accept that sometimes you're going to faceplant. And Amazon has definitely had some spectacular misses. Take the Fire Phone, for example, or services like Amazon Destinations and Amazon Local. But the fascinating thing is, Bezos never saw these as disasters. Actually, scratch that. He viewed them as a necessary part of the innovation process. His logic was, if you aren't failing occasionally, you simply aren't inventing. These missteps aren't just tolerated, they are literally baked into the company's DNA.
Part 5. The Amazon Legacy.
So all this relentless drive, all this experimentation, and total customer obsession brings us right up to today. In 2021, Jeff Bezos officially stepped down as CEO to become executive chair, and he left behind a company that is almost totally unrecognizable from the one that started in that Bellevue garage in 1994. Today, Amazon is a staggering global giant. It completely dominates e-commerce, cloud computing, entertainment streaming, smart home technology, and global logistics. Just take a second to contrast this massive multi-industry dominance with those early employees kneeling on a concrete garage floor just to pack a single book. It's wild.
Which brings us right back to where we started in this explainer. Jeff Bezos built an absolute empire because he projected himself to age 80 and realized he just couldn't live with the regret of not trying. So as we wrap things up today, I want to leave you with this question to really chew on. What is your regret minimization framework? What leap, whether it's big or small, do you need to take right now to avoid future regret? Because, honestly, who knows what the next garage startup to completely change our world's going to be? Thanks for exploring this with me today.